Margaret didn't forget her daughter's birthday. She called, left a message, and never heard back. Weeks passed, no visits, no return call, just silence. At 74, Margaret began to wonder, did I say something wrong? It wasn't a fight, just a few words she thought were harmless, until they weren't. In this video, we'll uncover 6 common phrases women over 60 say that quietly create distance. Through Margaret's journey, you'll discover how one quiet sentence changed everything, starting with the very first. 1. You never call me anymore. Margaret used to wait by the phone, not literally, but in those quiet afternoons, with the tea just going cold, she'd glance over, hoping to see her daughter's name flash on the screen. One day, the phone did ring, but it wasn't her daughter, it was her friend Helen, calling just to check in. After a bit of chatting, Helen sighed and said, I finally stopped saying, you never call me anymore. It only made them call less. That moment stuck with Margaret, and when she listened to one of her old voicemails, she heard it. That tone, that wounded pause, that heavy phrase. It's a sentence loaded with weight, one that might seem innocent, even justified. After all, isn't it true? They don't call as often. But when we say you never call me anymore, it often lands as a guilt trip, not an invitation, not a celebration of connection, just blame in disguise. What it really communicates is, you've failed me. That's a hard feeling for any loved one to receive, especially adult children juggling work, stress, and raising families of their own. Instead of drawing them closer, it can feel like emotional quicksand. They want to avoid sinking deeper into that sense of failure. Here's a gentle shift. Celebrate the moments they do reach out. Try, it made my whole day hearing your voice. Or even better, send a little text that says, I was thinking of you and smiled. It's soft, it's warm, and it opens a door without a push. You're not ignoring your feelings by being kind, you're guiding the relationship back into the sunlight. People respond to joy, warmth, openings, not guilt. Remember, it's okay to miss someone and say so. Just wrap it in love, not loss. 2. Back in my day, we never did that. Sunday dinners at Margaret's used to be full of laughter, especially when her grandson tried to show her the latest app he was using to order noodles shaped like dinosaurs. But last week, when he pulled out his phone at the table, she couldn't help but comment, back in my day, we weren't glued to machines while eating. The conversation cooled. The noodles stayed on the plate. This phrase, so common, so instinctive, often comes from a place of wanting to share our story, our wisdom, our memories. But when framed this way, it doesn't feel like wisdom to younger ears. It sounds like dismissal, a kind of quiet judgment wrapped in nostalgia. Why does this matter so much? Because it touches something deeper, the desire to be respected and heard. When we say, back in my day, it's often because we want to feel like our experiences matter too. But here's the secret, they already do. They just need to be told as stories, not standards. Instead of drawing a comparison, share a slice of your world. When I was your age, we passed notes on paper. If you got caught, you were doomed. See the difference? Same memory, but now it invites a smile, not a defense. It also creates a beautiful opening, because when you offer a piece of your past with warmth and curiosity, chances are, they'll offer you a glimpse into their world too. Want to connect across generations? Don't compare, just share. 3. You're too sensitive. This one came to Margaret on a Tuesday afternoon, over lukewarm soup and silence. She'd been speaking with her daughter earlier that day. Nothing dramatic, just a comment she made about her hairstyle. It's a bit wild, don't you think? Her daughter paused, said she had to go, and hung up shortly after. When Margaret told Helen about it, she shrugged. I just said she's too sensitive. Helen looked up from her knitting and said softly, Margaret, we all hear that differently now. That phrase, you're too sensitive, might feel like a defense, like saying, I didn't mean to hurt you so you shouldn't be hurt. But feelings don't work that way. When we use that phrase, even with the kindest intentions, it tells the other person, your emotions aren't valid. Why does this hit so deeply? Because sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's connection. emotion, openness. And when someone shares that vulnerability, brushing it off can feel like a door slammed shut. So what's a better way? Start by being curious, not corrective. You might say, "I'm sorry. Did I say something that hurt you?" Or "Help me understand what you're feeling." Those words aren't weak, they're strong. They build bridges, not walls. Margaret tried this the next week. Her daughter brought up the comment again. Margaret took a breath and simply said, "I didn't mean to make you feel judged. I'm still learning how to say things better." There was a long pause, then a quiet, "Thanks, Mom." See, it's not about perfect words. It's about real heart. We all want to be seen, heard, understood. But sometimes the phrases we think are harmless hold more weight than we know. Which of these felt most familiar to you today? I'd love to hear. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might just help someone else feel a little less alone. 4. You never listen to me. Margaret once said it over breakfast, spoon halfway to her mouth, voice steady but tired. Her son had just finished explaining a decision about changing his career path. She'd offered advice, softly. He nodded, but didn't respond. "You never listened to me," she said. He blinked. "I heard you, Mom," he replied. But the mood shifted. He finished quickly. No refills, no stories, just goodbye, and the clink of a coffee cup being rinsed. Here's the thing, "You never listen to me" isn't really about sound. It's about feeling invisible, feeling like your words are floating through a room and hitting walls, not hearts. And for many women over 60, whose voices were often hushed or overlooked growing up, feeling heard in later life matters more than ever. But this phrase, said in frustration or fatigue, can come across like a closed door, like an accusation. And even when it's true, it's often unhelpful. Let's unpack why. When you say you never listen, what your loved one might hear is, "You don't care about me, you don't respect me, you failed me." It puts them on the defensive, so instead of opening up, they shut down. They stop trying. But don't worry, this isn't about staying silent or shrinking yourself. Quite the opposite. It's about speaking in a way that creates space, not tension. So what can you say instead? Try, "Can I share something that really matters to me?" Or "Would now be a good time to talk about something on my mind?" Simple, respectful, inviting. When you give someone the gift of being asked, they're far more likely to give you the gift of attention. Margaret tried this with her son the next week. She said, "Hey, I've been thinking about something important. Do you have a moment later to talk?" He looked up from his phone. "Of course, Mom." No accusations, no guilt, just connection, and a lot more than she expected. 5. I guess I'm just a burden now. This one cuts deep. Margaret muttered it one evening after asking her daughter for help with the new thermostat. It was a passing comment, half under her breath, as her daughter tried to explain for the third time how to program it. "I guess I'm just a burden now," she said with a shrug. The room went silent. Her daughter didn't respond. She just quietly put on her coat and said, "We'll try again another time." What happened here wasn't just a sentence, it was a shield. A sad little armor made of self-pity, vulnerability, and fear. But instead of protecting the relationship, it pierced it. Many older women say this not to guilt trip, but because they genuinely feel like they're becoming too much. The aches, the asks, the confusion around tech, or needing a ride, it all starts to feel like a tally of what they take instead of what they give. But here's the secret. No one tells you, your presence is the gift. You are not a burden, you are a storybook, a well of memory, a source of steadiness in a world that spins too fast. Still, this phrase, spoken in weariness or insecurity, can break trust with family. Why? Because it doesn't invite closeness, it manipulates. It says, "If I'm a burden, you're failing me if you don't help me." Even when unintentional, that implication can drive loved ones away. They start feeling like they're walking on eggshells, worried that any no will be met with sadness. So how do we shift this? Try vulnerability without the sting. "I know this might be frustrating. Would you mind helping me one more time?" Or "I'm trying to figure this out." but I could use a bit of support. You're still asking for help, but now it's wrapped in clarity and confidence, not guilt. Margaret's daughter later told her, Mom, it's okay to ask me for things. I just don't want you to feel like you have to earn it with sadness. There's power in asking with pride. There's peace in being clear. You're not a burden. You're someone still growing, still worthy of being held. 6. You only come around when you want something. This one might be the hardest. Margaret said it last spring, when her grandson stopped by to pick up a box of old records. She was thrilled to see him, offered tea, cookies, even dug up an old photo album, but he was in a hurry. And when he said, Thanks, Grandma, love you, she smiled thinly, and replied, You only come around when you want something. He paused, said nothing, then left. He didn't come back for months. It's a phrase born of longing, disappointment, maybe even fear that we're being used, not loved. And that's a painful feeling, no doubt. But let's look at what this comment actually does to the relationship. It labels, it accuses, it replaces warmth with suspicion. It tells someone, I don't trust your love. I see you as selfish. Even if it feels true in the moment, this phrase poisons the well, because sometimes visits are rushed, life gets busy. Younger people don't always understand how deeply a 10-minute visit can matter, but shaming them for showing up, even briefly, only teaches them that showing up isn't enough, that their presence will be met with guilt, not gratitude. So what could you say instead? Try this. It's always so good to see you. Even if just for a moment, you made my day. Or I wish we had more time, but I'm really glad you came. It invites them back. It reminds them that their presence matters, even if imperfectly given. Margaret started doing this. And you know what? Her grandson didn't just come back. He started staying longer, sitting for tea, asking questions. The warmth returned. Because when people feel welcomed, not blamed, they return. Margaret's journey shows us something powerful. The words we choose can either build bridges, or stack bricks between us and the ones we love. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever said something you didn't realize might hurt until later? What's one phrase you're ready to reframe? Share it below. We're all learning together. 7. I don't want to be a bother. It slips out like a whisper, like an apology you weren't supposed to say aloud. Margaret said it just last month, when her arthritis flared, and she hesitated to ask her neighbor to carry in the groceries. She smiled, waved it off, and said, I don't want to be a bother. Her neighbor nodded politely, but inside, Margaret felt unseen, as if her needs were a nuisance, as if asking made her less. Here's the truth. Many women over 60 quietly carry we were raised to be strong, to serve, to not make a fuss. And with age, that tendency to shrink ourselves, to avoid bothering others, can quietly become isolation. But here's the emotional trap. By avoiding the risk of being a bother, we actually become one in a different way. We hold back, stay silent, and then feel disappointed when no one reads our minds or offers help. This phrase may seem selfless, but it teaches others to stop checking in. It shuts the door gently, and eventually, people stop knocking. Now let's shift the script. What if, instead of brushing off help, we practiced receiving it with grace, saying, I'd really appreciate that, or that would be so helpful. Thank you. Asking doesn't make you weak. Receiving doesn't make you needy. It makes you human, and it keeps the relationship alive with mutual care. Margaret tried this with her neighbor the next week. She said, Would you mind grabbing the bags for me? My hands are stiff today. Her neighbor smiled and said, Of course. It became a new rhythm, not a burden, a bond. You're not a bother. You're allowed to ask. You're allowed to matter. 8. Don't worry about me. This one usually comes with a shrug, a smile that's too quick, or a phone call ending with, I'm fine, really. Don't worry about me. Margaret used this line like armor, especially after her fall in the garden last spring. A scraped knee, a little bruise, and a big silence. When her daughter asked how she was doing, Margaret smiled tightly and said, Don't worry about me, then quickly changed the subject. It sounds kind, doesn't it? like you're letting them off the hook, like you're easing their load. But under the surface, this phrase often hides a deeper emotion: fear of becoming a source of worry, fear of appearing fragile, of reminding others that yes, we're aging, and yes, sometimes we need more. Why does this matter emotionally? Because when you always say don't worry, your loved ones start believing you. They stop checking in. They assume you're doing just fine, and that silence becomes distance. Your attempt to protect them from worry ends up protecting yourself from support. Let's rewrite this habit. Try saying, I'm okay for now, but I could use a little company this week. Or I'm managing, but it helps when you check in. It means a lot. You're not creating drama. You're creating connection. Margaret eventually told her daughter, I know I always say not to worry, but truthfully, it's been a lonely week. Her daughter teared up. I didn't know, Mom. Openness isn't weakness. It's a way back to each other. 9. I'm fine. The classic short, polite, and completely misleading. Margaret used to say it almost reflexively, at the doctor's office, at the grocery store, even with her closest friends. I'm fine, she'd say, even when her back ached, her thoughts felt foggy, or her heart felt a little too heavy. This phrase is like a curtain. It covers, deflects, conceals. But what it really says is, I don't want to talk about it. I don't think my feelings are worth the air. And over time, it builds a wall. Why do we say it? Because sometimes it's easier than explaining. Sometimes we think sharing makes us a burden. Sometimes we don't even have the words. But here's the quiet harm. People stop asking. They stop digging. They believe the script. And we're left in a performance that no one applauds. Let's imagine a new approach. Instead of, I'm fine, try, it's been a tough week, but I'm getting through it. Or I've had better days, but I'm here. These are still dignified, still composed, but honest, real. And real invites connection. When Margaret tried this with her best friend, she expected awkward silence. Instead, she got a hug, a cup of tea, and a long chat that ended with laughter and tears. All because she skipped the script. Being not fine doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're living. And living, truly living, means feeling all of it and letting people in. So as we close this part of Margaret's journey, here's a question for you. Which of these phrases have you caught yourself saying lately? And what's a new one you'd like to try? Instead, let's talk in the comments. You never know whose day your story might change. 10. It's not like anyone needs me anymore. This one doesn't come out loud. It seeps through the pauses, the sighs, the neverminds whispered after sharing an idea. Margaret didn't say it to anyone. She said it to herself. One day, after folding laundry no one asked her to wash, she looked at the empty hallway and murmured, I'm not sure they'd even notice if I disappeared. It's a haunting thought, one too many women over 60 quietly carry. The kids are grown. The calendar isn't as full. Conversations shift from what do you think to thanks, I've got it. And slowly the heart wonders, am I still needed? Do I still matter? This phrase, it's not like anyone needs me anymore, may never be said directly to a loved one, but it's felt in how we pull back, how we stop volunteering input, how we shrink from the room. Why does this hurt? Because feeling needed is tied to feeling valuable. And when women, especially caregivers, nurturers, steady rocks of the family, start to believe they're no longer essential, loneliness moves in like fog. But here's what's quietly true. Your presence still holds weight. It's just shifted. You're no longer needed to pack lunches or drive to practice. You're needed for wisdom, for grounding, for the kind of love that has seen decades. And that kind of need, it's deep, but it requires you to step forward, not fade back. So start small. Offer a recipe, a memory, a kind word. Be present. Be there. Margaret started a Sunday soup pot, open invitation. And the thing is, they came, not because they needed dinner, but because they needed her. You still matter. More than ever, don't let the silence convince you otherwise. 11. It's fine. I'll just do it myself. The groceries were heavy. the lid on the jar too tight, the ladder, a little wobbly, and Margaret, like so many of us, muttered, "It's fine, I'll just do it myself." She didn't want to trouble anyone, didn't want to wait, didn't want to seem helpless. But here's the irony: doing it all alone doesn't always make us stronger. Sometimes, it just makes us feel alone. This phrase might sound like independence, but underneath, it often masks two things: pride and pain. The pride of not needing help, and the pain of not being offered it. And yes, many of us were raised to just get on with it, but over time, always doing it yourself sends a signal: I don't need you. And eventually, people believe you. That creates distance, not because they don't love you, but because they think you prefer to handle it solo. And that's the danger. Self-sufficiency becomes misunderstood as disinterest. So what's the shift? Practice allowing. Not always, not everything, but sometimes. Say, "Would you mind giving me a hand with this?" Or, "I know I could do it, but I'd enjoy your company if you helped." This isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's letting love in. Margaret eventually asked her grandson to help her replant the back garden bed. He said yes with a grin, and they spent the whole afternoon in the dirt, swapping stories. Sometimes, the task is just a task, but the help? That's where connection lives. 12. I'll just stay out of the way. It was a birthday party, balloons, chatter, cake in the kitchen. Margaret stood near the hallway, half smiling, hands tucked neatly in front of her. When someone asked why she wasn't joining the photo, she replied, "Oh, I'll just stay out of the way." No one forced her there. She drifted there, quietly, out of habit. And that's the thing. This phrase isn't about space. It's about belonging. Or more truthfully, the creeping belief that maybe you no longer do. "I'll just stay out of the way" might sound polite, but emotionally, it's heavy. It tells the people around you, I'm irrelevant, I'm extra, I don't want to inconvenience. But ask yourself, would you ever want someone you love to feel like that? Exactly. When you remove yourself, you also remove your light, your laughter, your presence. And even if they don't say it, your family feels the gap. So let's rewrite it. Instead of stepping aside, step into something, offer to help with the music, set the table, snap the photos, say, "Where can I jump in?" Or even save me a seat near the cake. Not every moment is about being the center, but every moment is about being present. Margaret tried it at the next gathering. She brought her old camera, said, "I'm in charge of memories today," and just like that, she was in the moment again. You're not in the way, you're part of the story. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever quietly stepped back, thinking you were doing the right thing, but it left you feeling distant instead? Let's reflect together in the comments. Your honesty could light the way for someone else. 13. You don't have to include me. Margaret said it one Christmas Eve, when her daughter-in-law was going over plans for a small ski trip with the kids. They were talking dates, food, luggage. Margaret smiled gently and added, "You don't have to include me. I know it's a lot." They didn't. And later that week she sat at home quietly folding linens while snow gathered outside. At first glance, this phrase feels generous, noble even, like you're sparing others the trouble. But look closer, it's often soaked in self-protection, a gentle push away so you won't feel rejected later. If I decline now, I can't be left out later. This is how disconnection begins, with withdrawal that looks like grace. Why does it matter emotionally? Because inclusion is about more than the invitation. It's about feeling seen, valued, still part of things. Women over 60, especially those no longer in the daily chaos of parenting or work, often wrestle with feeling peripheral, like the world is moving on without them. Saying "you don't have to include me" might shield you from disappointment, but it also teaches others that you're content being left behind. Flip it. Try "I'd love to be there, even if just for part of it," or "let me know how I can join." It means a lot. Express the desire. Open the door. The more you show you want to belong, the more others remember you do. Margaret said that the next year, and she found herself sitting around a campfire in boots, 2 sizes too big, wrapped in laughter and fleece. You deserve to be included. But sometimes, you have to remind them, and yourself, that you still want to be. 14. You're too busy, I don't want to get in the way. Let's take a walk into this one. It often starts with observation. Your daughter's juggling kids and a job. Your son's traveling nonstop. The world's fast. Schedules are tight. So like Margaret, you tell yourself, they're too busy, I shouldn't bother them. But here's what quietly happens. You stop calling. Stop asking for visits. Stop showing up. One day Margaret was flipping through an old photo album and said aloud, I wonder when the kids will have time again. But when her daughter called, Margaret cheerfully said, Oh, I know you're too busy, I'm fine. The call lasted 6 minutes. This phrase seems thoughtful, respectful, but it's actually a silent door closing. It tells others, don't prioritize me. I've already stepped aside. And here's what matters emotionally. Women thrive on connection, not just being remembered, but being part of the fabric of life. When you step back, not because they asked you to, but because you assumed you're too much for their pace, you end up reinforcing the very loneliness you feared. Instead, reframe the connection. Don't demand hours. Ask for moments. Try, I know things are hectic. Would you have 10 minutes to chat later this week? Or even a short visit means the world to me. Connection doesn't need a weekend trip. Sometimes it's just a shared cup of coffee, or a quick message that says, thinking of you. Margaret texted her grandson with just that. His reply came 2 minutes later. Want to FaceTime tonight? You're not in the way. You're someone worth making time for. 15. It's okay. I'm used to being alone. This one has a different kind of silence. A quiet resignation. It's not said with bitterness, but with a weary kind of pride. Margaret said it one night while chatting with her neighbor Ruth. Ruth had invited her over for cards, and Margaret smiled, shook her head, and replied, It's okay, I'm used to being alone. Then she turned and walked back to her porch, alone with her shadow and the humming streetlight. It's a sentence that wears strength like armor, but underneath, there's often an ache. Because let's be honest, even those of us who enjoy solitude weren't meant to feel invisible. Why does this one hit so hard? Because it isn't always untrue. Many older women have had to get used to being alone, after loss, after retirement, after kids moved far away. But using that truth as a shield keeps warmth from getting back in. The problem is, it teaches others to stop offering. So how can we shift? Start by making room for a yes, even when you're unsure. Say, I've gotten used to my own company, but it'd be lovely to join you. Or I'd enjoy some company. Actually, thank you for asking. It doesn't erase your independence. It just reminds others that their invitation still matters. Margaret tried it with Ruth 2 weeks later. She said yes. They played cards, ate cookies, shared old stories. The streetlight outside hummed, just the same, but inside something softer glowed. Being alone doesn't mean you're forgotten, but letting people in is how you stay remembered. Let me ask you gently, have any of these phrases found their way into your days? If so, which one are you ready to rewrite starting today? Share your thoughts in the comments. You never know whose heart you'll touch just by telling your truth. You made it. Proof you care more about connection than keeping score. If even one of these phrases sparked an oops, that's me, guess what? You're growing. That's gold. Now drop a comment, share your favorite rewrite, and let's swap stories. We're wiser and funnier together. Don't leave me hanging.